Welcome to tonight's episode of Science to Sleep By. I'm just an illusion, really? That's the question we're here to explore tonight, as you gently settle into a quiet space, letting your mind float into the rhythm of thought and wonder. You see, time is the one thing we never escape. It's there when you wake up in the morning, counting the seconds on the digital glow of your alarm clock. It's there as you grow older, noticing the changes in the mirror, in the faces of your loved ones, in the slow unfolding of your own story. But have you ever stopped to ask, what is time truly? Is it a solid, physical thing, flowing in one direction, carrying us along like a river? Or is it something softer, something our minds create, something that isn't quite as real as it feels? This is the problem we are going to wrestle with together, not in a harsh or stressful way, but in the gentle way of thought, where ideas can drift like clouds across the wide sky of the mind. For centuries, thinkers have argued about the nature of time. Philosophers wondered if the past, present, and future are all equally real, or if only the now exists. Scientists discovered that time behaves strangely, bending under the weight of gravity and stretching when we move fast enough. And psychologists revealed that our experience of time is shaped not just by physics, but also by memory, perception, and emotion. Tonight, we'll float slowly through these ideas, not to force an answer, but to rest in the wonder of the question itself. And so, let's begin with the feeling of time, because that's where it always begins for us. Think about how deeply your life is ruled by it. You measure your day in hours, you plan your week with calendars, you measure your age in years. Even when you try to relax, there's often that quiet awareness in the back of your mind that the seconds are ticking, that moments are slipping past you like sand through your fingers. That sensation that we are moving through something, that life is being carried along by a current of time, is one of the most fundamental aspects of human experience. Yet, it is also the very thing being questioned. Could it be that this flow is not something out there in the universe, but something our minds construct to make sense of change? Let's think about the word illusion for a moment. When we say something is an illusion, we don't necessarily mean it doesn't exist at all. We mean that it isn't what it seems. The rainbow after a rainstorm is real, but it's not an object you can touch. It's a trick of light and water droplets, an image that appears to our eyes, but disappears when you try to grasp it. Could time be something like that? Not an object in the universe, not a force flowing forward, but a pattern our brains create as we move through events, memories, and sensations. And yet, we can't ignore the fact that time feels so powerful. Think about the way a single day can stretch or contract depending on what you're doing. A joyful hour in good company feels like a moment, while a stressful hour waiting for news can feel like an eternity. This doesn't mean time itself changes, but that our perception of it bends, stretches, and folds in ways that make it hard to trust. And if our experience of time is so malleable, so deeply tied to perception, can we be certain that what we call time is anything more than a kind of illusion? Now, let's turn our attention outward, away from our immediate senses, toward the universe itself. This is where the puzzle deepens, because physics, our best attempt to describe reality, tells us that time is not what common sense suggests. If you move very quickly, at a speed close to that of light, your experience of time slows down compared to someone standing still. This isn't imagination. It's been measured with satellites, with clocks, with the very devices that keep our modern world synchronized. That means that time is not one universal river, flowing the same for all of us. It is different for each observer, shaped by motion, by gravity, by perspective. This is where the illusion begins to show, because if two people can live through different lengths of time depending on how they move, then what does it mean to say time is absolute? Perhaps the flow of time is not a universal truth, but a relative experience, stitched together by observers. But before we get lost in equations or theories, I want you to imagine something simple: a still evening, the kind of quiet night when you sit on your porch, or maybe outside a cabin, watching the stars overhead. You see the moon, you see the constellations, and you might feel as though you're looking at the present moment. But what you're actually seeing is the past. Light takes time to travel, and the stars above you are ancient. Some may have burned out long ago, but their glow still streaks across the vast distances, only reaching you tonight. When you realize this, the present moment feels less stable. It's as though time is layered, overlapping, and what you think is now will already be thousands of years old. This is where the hook lies, the problem we are going to untangle tonight. If time can stretch and bend, if time can feel long or short, if time can show us a sky full of dead stars, then what is time really? Is it a fundamental part of the universe, woven into reality like the threads of a tapestry? Or is it something closer to a dream, an illusion we cannot wake up from because it's the very fabric of our perception? We don't need to force an answer. Instead, we will drift deeper into the mystery, allowing science, philosophy, and human wonder to guide us. And as you breathe in, slowly, and breathe out, you might feel yourself settling into the rhythm of the question itself. You might notice that the more closely we examine time, the less solid it becomes. The clocks on the wall, the calendar on your desk, the birthday candles you've blown out over the years, all of them point to something we call time. But is it real, or just a way of making sense of change, of organizing memory, of experiencing a universe where nothing ever stays the same? The human experience of time is unlike anything else. It is at once universal and deeply personal. Every one of us is bound to it, yet each of us feels it in ways that no one else can fully understand. Time is not just a number on a clock or a date on a calendar. It is the slow, almost invisible motion of our lives, the shifting seasons, the marks of change etched into the body, the way memories form and fade, and the way we anticipate the unknown future. To live is to live inside time, and yet, curiously, we are not always sure what it is we are living inside of. Think for a moment about how you first encountered time as a child. Long before you could read a clock, you already felt it. The wait before a birthday seemed endless, stretching like an eternity. Summer afternoons felt vast and boundless, as though a single day could last forever. Childhood teaches us that time is not consistent. It can slow to a crawl when we're impatient or speed past when we're absorbed in play. The paradox begins here. If time were truly something fixed, something external and unchanging, how could it bend and stretch so dramatically inside our experience? As we grow old, our sense of time changes again. Days begin to blur into one another. Weeks fly by in what feels like a blink. The years seem shorter with every birthday, because they are actually shorter, but because our minds perceive them differently. Psychologists suggest that when we are young, every moment feels new, so the brain records experiences densely, making time feel longer. As we age, more of life becomes familiar, routines form, and the mind records fewer unique details, giving us the sense that time is slipping by more quickly. This creates the strange sensation that time is accelerating, when in reality it is our perception that is shifting. There's another layer to this, the way emotions alter our experience of time. Think of the slow drag of waiting for test results, or the way grief makes days feel endless, weighed down with heaviness. Compare that to the speed of joy, when laughter and love make hours vanish as though they were seconds. In these moments, time isn't a mechanical ticking. It isn't an absolute, external flow. It is pliable, bending under the weight of feeling, shaped by the rhythm of the heart and the state of the mind. This becomes even clearer when you reflect on memory. Memory is how we carry time inside us. Without memory, there would be no sense of a past, no way to measure the passing of life. But memory is selective, fragile, and uneven. You might remember a childhood birthday in vivid detail, the smell of candles, the sound of laughter, the color of balloons, yet forget what you had for dinner 2 nights ago. This uneven recording of life means our personal timeline is not a smooth, continuous line, but a series of moments, some preserved, others lost. The way we stitch these fragments together gives us a sense of past, present, and future, even though, in truth, we are always only in the present. The mind is what constructs continuity, and continuity is what we call time. And then there is anticipation, the way we project ourselves forward into the unknown. Humans are unique in this ability to imagine futures, to rehearse possibilities, to worry about what has not yet happened. This capacity is a gift, allowing us to plan, to prepare, to dream. But it also ties us to a constant awareness of time's passing. You might find yourself staring at a calendar, counting the days until a trip, or anxiously calculating how long it will take to reach a goal. The future becomes something you live inside of before it even arrives. And just as memory is an imperfect reconstruction of the past, anticipation is an imperfect construction of the future. Between them, the mind creates a timeline, and it is this timeline that gives us the sensation of moving through time. Consider how deeply clocks and calendars have shaped human life. For most of history, people lived by natural rhythms, the rising and setting of the sun, the changing of seasons, the cycles of the moon. Time was experienced through nature, not measured precisely, but felt. Then came the invention of mechanical clocks, and later, digital timekeeping. Suddenly, hours and minutes became rigid divisions. The day was carved into measurable units, and with that came schedules, deadlines, timetables. Our sense of time became sharper, but also harsher. We began to live not just by the rhythm of the earth, but by the tick of human-made devices, and those ticks define productivity, order, even identity. Now think about how strange this is. Time as a personal, fluid experience was overlaid with time as an external authority. You are not just experiencing the flow of life as your brain and emotions perceive it. You are also constantly aligning yourself with the standardized system of seconds, minutes, and hours. This creates tension. On the one hand, time feels subjective, emotional, deeply personal. On the other hand, society demands that time be objective, measurable, precise. You must arrive at work at 9, attend a meeting at 2, catch a plane at 6. And yet, when you look back at the day, you might feel as though those hours stretched or shrank in ways no clock could measure. The dissonance between lived time and measured time is part of the illusion we are exploring. When you pay attention closely, you begin to see that the human experience of time is a tapestry of layers. There is biological time, marked by the heartbeat, by the cycles of sleep and wakefulness, by the rhythms of hormones and metabolism. There is psychological time, shaped by memory, anticipation, and emotion. And there is social time, enforced by clocks, calendars, and culture. Together, these layers create the sense that time is a steady river carrying us forward. But perhaps it is not the river we think it is. Perhaps it is a mosaic of experiences, stitched together into a pattern that feels like a flow. Imagine sitting quietly now, thinking about your own life. Think of a moment from years ago that still feels fresh, as if it happened yesterday. Then think of a moment from last week that already feels distant, as if it belongs to another era. Both are part of your timeline, but they do not line up evenly. They stretch, contract, and shift depending on what they mean to you. That is the essence of the human experience of time, is not equal for all moments. It is not measured only by clocks but by meaning. And it is this unevenness that makes us wonder whether time itself is real, or whether it is the mind that creates the illusion of its flow. And so, as you reflect on the minutes that seem to vanish in joy, the hours that drag in sorrow, the years that accelerate with age, you might begin to see time not as a rigid framework, but as a flexible, fragile perception. The human experience of time is both deeply intimate and profoundly deceptive. It feels absolute, yet it bends with every thought, every memory, every heartbeat. When most people think of time, they think of something fixed, steady, and unchanging, like the tick of a clock or the turning of a calendar page. For centuries, that was the dominant view. Time was thought to be absolute, a universal rhythm that beat the same for everyone, everywhere, no matter who you were or where you were. Sir Isaac Newton described time as flowing equably without relation to anything external. In simpler terms, he believed time was a kind of invisible background, a universal stage upon which the drama of the universe unfolded. Whether you were on Earth, on the moon, or drifting through deep space, time itself ticked at the same pace, unstoppable, unwavering. But then came Albert Einstein, and with him, everything we thought we knew about time began to unravel. Einstein's theory of relativity, first introduced in the early 20th century, did something extraordinary. It shattered the idea of absolute time. Instead, it revealed a universe where time could bend, stretch, and even slow down depending on how you moved and where you stood. Time was no longer the universal backdrop. It was woven into the very fabric of the cosmos, tangled up with space itself, in what he called spacetime. To understand this, you need to imagine that space and time are not separate, not two independent things, but part of a single, connected entity. Space tells matter where to move, and matter tells space-time how to curve. The result is a universe where time is not absolute, but relative. One of the clearest ways to feel this is through Einstein's idea of time dilation. Imagine two people, one stays on Earth, living their ordinary life, while the other boards a spaceship that travels close to the speed of light. As the spaceship accelerates, something strange happens. To the person aboard, time feels perfectly normal. They eat, sleep, breathe, and think at the same pace they always have. But when they return to Earth, they discover that while only a short period has passed for them, many years have passed for those who remain behind. Their friends have aged. The world has changed. History has unfolded. But for the traveler, only a fraction of that time has been experienced. Time has literally moved differently for the two people, depending on their motion. This is not just theory. Experiments have confirmed it again and again. We have sent atomic clocks aboard airplanes and satellites, comparing their time with clocks left on Earth. The results are consistent. Moving faster changes the passage of time. Even our everyday technology, like the GPS in your phone, would fail miserably if it didn't account for relativity. Satellites orbiting the Earth are moving at high speeds, and they also experience weaker gravity than we do on the ground. Both of these factors make time pass differently for them. Without adjustments based on Einstein's equations, GPS would drift, giving errors of miles within a single day. The fact that your phone can tell you where you are, down to the street corner, is a quiet testimony to the reality that time is not fixed. But relativity doesn't stop with speed. Gravity, too, bends time. The stronger the gravitational field, the slower time runs. This is called gravitational time dilation. Imagine two clocks, one on the surface of the Earth, and another on a satellite far above. The one on Earth, closer to the mass of the planet and deeper in its gravitational well, ticks ever so slightly slower than the one far away in weaker gravity. The difference is tiny, but it is real, and it has been measured with exquisite precision. The implication is staggering. Time itself runs at different rates depending on where you are in the universe. If you could stand at the edge of a black hole, where gravity is so intense that not even light can escape, the effect would become extreme. To you, moments would pass as usual, but to a distant observer, your clock would appear to slow down dramatically, stretching into near stillness. From their perspective, you would seem frozen in time. The idea that time can nearly stop near such cosmic monsters shows just how flexible and strange it is in the fabric of reality. Now think about what this means for our everyday understanding. We often treat time as a ruler, something that measures out events evenly, one after the other. But relativity reveals that time is more like a soft thread, twisting and bending depending on the forces at play. There is no single universal now. Each person, each object, each observer experiences their own slice of reality, their own rhythm of time, depending on their speed and position in the cosmos. In a sense, there are as many times as there are perspectives. Einstein himself once remarked that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. What he meant is that if time can be stretched and warped by motion and gravity, then the neat separation we imagine between yesterday, today, and tomorrow may not reflect the deeper structure of the universe. In relativity, time and space together form a four-dimensional fabric, where events simply exist, laid out in a continuum. The flow of time that we experience may not be a feature of the universe itself, but but of our perception moving through it. Let's pause here and imagine the universe not as a sequence, but as a vast block of space-time. In this view, your birth, your present moment, and your death all coexist as part of the fabric. The Earth's orbit around the Sun, the motion of galaxies, the formation of stars, all of it exists in this cosmic tapestry. From this perspective, time does not flow forward like a river. Instead, it is all already there, and what we call the present is simply the slice of space-time we happen to be experiencing. This idea, sometimes called the block universe, challenges everything about how we normally think of time. It suggests that change and flow are not properties of the cosmos, but of consciousness moving along a dimension we cannot fully grasp. For the human mind, this is difficult to accept, because we feel time so vividly. We feel it when we wait, when we age, when we look back at memories or forward into possibilities. Yet relativity forces us to consider that time is not the same for everyone, that it bends under gravity, that it stretches with speed, that it has no single universal measure. The seconds ticking on your watch are not necessarily the same as the seconds ticking on mine. The hours I live may not align with the hours you live, depending on where we are and how we move. And yet, in the quiet of everyday life, relativity is invisible. You don't feel time stretching as you sit in your living room. You don't sense your clock ticking differently from someone in orbit above you. But these effects, though subtle on human scales, become profound when we look to the cosmos. They remind us that our intuitive sense of time is incomplete, perhaps even deceptive. Time is not the steady background we once imagined. It is flexible, pliable, relative. And the more closely we examine it, the less it resembles the familiar ticking of a clock, and the more it begins to resemble an illusion woven by the strange, curved fabric of the universe. The block universe theory is one of the most thought-provoking and perhaps unsettling ideas in modern physics. It takes Einstein's relativity a step further and asks us to reconsider what we really mean by the past, the present, and the future. In our daily lives, time feels like a flowing river. We picture ourselves standing on its banks as the current carries the present moment forward. Behind us lies the past, a trail of moments already gone, and ahead of us lies the future, a stream of moments yet to arrive. The sense of flow seems obvious and undeniable, but the block universe suggests that the river is not flowing at all. Instead, the entire river, all it stretches, every ripple, every drop already exists. Past, present, and future are not in motion, but part of one vast, timeless structure. To picture this, imagine a loaf of bread. Each slice of the loaf represents a moment in time. From our perspective, we move from slice to slice, living through events one at a time, as though the loaf were being sliced before us. But in the block universe view, the entire loaf already exists, complete and whole. Every slice, every moment is as real as the one you're experiencing right now. Your birth, your first day of school, the conversations you've had, even the day you will someday take your last breath, all of it is part of the loaf. It does not come into being when you arrive at it. It was always there, waiting in the structure of space-time. This idea is a direct consequence of Einstein's relativity. Because time is relative, different observers can disagree on the order of events depending on how they move. What seems to be now for one person may not be now for another. If there is no universal agreement on what constitutes the present, then perhaps the present is not a privileged moment at all. Instead, every moment exists equally, and the feeling of a single, moving now is an illusion created by consciousness. From this perspective, time does not flow like a river. Rather, it is a landscape, and we are travelers moving through it, experiencing one moment after another, while all the moments exist equally and eternally. Let's bring this down to a more personal level. Think about a cherished memory, perhaps a family gathering, a birthday, or a quiet walk in the evening light. In the block universe, that memory is not gone. It does not cease to exist simply because you have moved beyond it. It remains a part of the fabric of space-time, as real as the moment you are experiencing right now. Similarly, the future you will one day live, the people you will meet, the experiences you will have, the changes you cannot yet imagine already exist, waiting in another part of the fabric. To your conscious mind, the future feels undefined, mysterious, and unknown. But in the block universe, it is already written, a chapter in the book of spacetime that you simply have not read yet. This can be both comforting and unsettling. On one hand, it means that nothing is truly lost. The people you have loved, the experiences you have had, the moments that have slipped from your grasp, they are still there, etched into the structure of the universe. They do not vanish. On the other hand, it suggests that free will, as we normally conceive of it, might be an illusion. If every moment, past and future, already exists, then perhaps our choices are not creating the future, but are simply part of the future that was always there. You may feel as though you are deciding in this very moment what to do tomorrow, but in the block universe, tomorrow already exists, with your choice already made. You are simply experiencing the unfolding of what was always part of the tapestry. To understand how strange this is, imagine again the loaf of bread. From your perspective, you are moving from one slice to the next, and you feel the flow of time. But from the perspective of someone who could see the entire loaf at once, there would be no flow, just the complete structure of moments, all existing equally. Physicists sometimes describe this as the eternalism view of time, contrasting it with presentism, which is the belief that only the present is real. Eternalism says that the past and future are just as real as the present, that the entire timeline of the universe is one unchanging, four-dimensional block. The block universe also raises questions about death. If the past still exists, then the people you have lost are not erased. Their moments are still there, suspended in the fabric of space-time, changing, eternal. To think of it this way is to see life not as a fleeting flame that is extinguished, but as a thread woven permanently into the cosmic tapestry. You may no longer experience their presence, but their presence remains, fixed in the coordinates of time, as real as any moment you are experiencing now. This perspective can offer a kind of solace, a reminder that existence is not undone simply because the conscious now has moved beyond it, and yet, despite its strangeness, the block universe fits the mathematics of relativity. It explains why observers in different states of motion can disagree on what now is. It removes the idea of a universal present and replaces it with the timeless whole. But it leaves us with the puzzle of perception. If all moments exist equally, why do we feel as though we are moving through them, one after the other? Why does the human mind create this sensation of flow, this illusion of passage? One possible answer is that consciousness is like a spotlight moving along the timeline. The spotlight illuminates one moment at a time, and the experience of movement is created by this shifting of focus. The moments are all there, but our awareness only shines on one slice at a time. Another way to think about it is to imagine a film reel. Every frame of the film already exists, printed on the strip. From the first frame to the last, nothing is missing. But when the film is projected, frame by frame, it creates the illusion of motion, of a story unfolding through time. In the same way, our conscious experience might be the projection of a fixed structure, giving us the sense of flow where, at the deepest level, there is only stillness. The block universe is like the film reel itself, complete, unchanging, eternal. Our lives are the movie, playing across the screen of our awareness. This brings us back to the tension between experience and reality. We feel time flowing, but physics suggests it may not be flowing at all. We feel as though the past is gone, and the future is yet to come, but science suggests both exist just as firmly as the present. The block universe does not deny our experience, it simply suggests that our experience is not the whole picture. What we perceive as the movement of time may be a construction of the mind, a way of navigating a universe where every moment already exists. And if this is true, then the question of illusion grows even deeper. Is time an illusion because it does not flow? Because all moments exist equally, and the passage we feel is only consciousness moving from frame to frame? Or is it an illusion because we insist on separating past, present, and future, when in reality, they are inseparable parts of a single, eternal whole? If relativity reshaped our understanding of time on the cosmic scale, showing us that it bends and stretches under speed and gravity, then quantum physics unsettles time in an entirely different way, at the smallest scales of existence. When we look closely down to the level of atoms and subatomic particles, time seems to lose its familiar meaning. The world of quantum mechanics is full of uncertainty, superposition, and entanglement, and within this strange domain, the ordinary ticking of time begins to blur. What we discover here is that time may not be as fundamental as we believe. It may instead be something that emerges, a construct that arises from deeper processes, or perhaps even something that disappears altogether when you peer close enough. In classical physics, time serves as a backdrop against which events unfold. You can picture it like a great cosmic clock, marking off the moments as particles move, collide, and interact. But in quantum mechanics, this clock begins to fade. For one thing, many of the equations that describe quantum behavior are timeless. They don't include time as a flowing parameter. They simply describe relationships, how one property connects to another without requiring the passage of seconds or minutes. This raises a profound question. If the laws governing the very building blocks of the universe do not need time, then why do we, at our scale, feel its grip so powerfully? One of the most famous puzzles in quantum mechanics is the measurement problem, the way particles seem to exist in many states at once, a superposition, until they are measured or observed. Before observation, an electron might be both here and there, spinning this way and that way simultaneously. But when observed, the electron seems to choose a definite state. This collapse from superposition to certainty seems to occur in an instant. But what does instant mean if time itself is part of the illusion? The act of measurement forces us to think about time differently. Did the particle exist in multiple possibilities across time until observation, or was time itself undefined until the observation took place? Then there is entanglement, that mysterious phenomenon Einstein once called spooky action at a distance. Two particles can become linked so deeply that when you measure one, the other responds instantly, even if they are separated by vast distances. This raises troubling questions about time. How can something happen instantly if time is supposed to govern the speed at which information travels? If the influence between entangled particles does not respect distance or delay, then perhaps time is not the barrier we think it is. Perhaps entanglement is pointing toward a reality where time, at least as we understand it, is not fundamental. Physicists have gone even further in questioning the role of time at the quantum level. Some propose that time itself is not a basic ingredient of the universe, but an emergent property, something that arises out of deeper laws, much like temperature emerges from the motion of countless atoms. Think of it this way. Temperature feels like a simple, obvious quality. You know when something is hot or cold. But temperature is not a fundamental property. It is the statistical effect of trillions of tiny motions happening at once. Similarly, time might not be a foundational backdrop of the universe. It could be the statistical result of countless quantum events, an emergent phenomenon that only appears when you zoom out from the smallest scales. This idea is echoed in what some physicists call the problem of time. When we try to merge general relativity with quantum mechanics, the great project of finding a theory of quantum gravity, we run into a paradox. In relativity, time is flexible and dynamic, part of the geometry of spacetime. But in quantum mechanics, the equations often don't include time at all. They are timeless. The conflict between these two pictures has led many scientists to suspect that our understanding of time is incomplete, or perhaps that time as we know it is not real in the deepest sense. It may only be a convenient approximation, a tool that works at human scales, but breaks down at the level of the universe's most fundamental laws. Imagine looking at the ocean from a great distance. From that perspective, it looks smooth and calm, a simple blue surface. But as you get closer, you see the waves, the ripples, the spray, the foam. Time, too, may be like that surface, smooth and continuous when seen from far away, but at the smallest scales, broken into something stranger, something that doesn't behave like the steady flow we are used to. Some physicists even speculate that time may be discrete, like frames in a film reel, rather than continuous. At the quantum scale, time could come in tiny, indivisible units, and what we experience as smooth flow is just our consciousness stitching together those frames into a narrative. Experiments in quantum physics have also revealed phenomena that seem to challenge the very direction of time. In our everyday lives, time feels like an arrow, always pointing forward. We remember the past, but not the future. We grow older, but never younger. Ice cubes melt in a glass of water, but melted water does not spontaneously form back into ice cubes without intervention. This arrow of time is tied to the increase of entropy, the tendency for disorder to increase in closed systems. Yet at the quantum level, the basic equations are time-symmetric. They work equally well forward and backward. Nothing in the math prefers a direction. A process described by quantum mechanics is just as valid running in reverse as it is running forward. If the deepest laws of physics don't care which way time runs, then why do we experience such a strict forward motion? Why is there such a clear divide between memory and anticipation? Some researchers propose that the arrow of time might be a product of perspective. At the level of the universe as a whole, there is no preferred direction, but within the local conditions we inhabit, conditions shaped by the Big Bang, by entropy, by the evolution of complexity, we experience a one-way flow. Our sense of time may therefore be less about fundamental laws, and more about the particular state of the cosmos we live in. This view suggests that time is not a universal truth, but a local phenomenon, a byproduct of the initial conditions of our universe. Quantum mechanics also introduces the possibility of multiple realities existing simultaneously, as in the many worlds interpretation. If every quantum decision branches into multiple outcomes, creating parallel universes, then time itself may also branch. Each possible future may already exist in a vast multiverse of possibilities. From your perspective, you experience only one thread, one unfolding of events, but in the grand scheme, a possibility is realized. Time, in this picture, is not a single line, but a branching tree, infinitely splitting, with every choice and every chance event carving a new path. And if all those paths exist, then what does it mean to say that one future is real and another is not? This perspective loops us back to the question we have been circling. Is time an illusion? In quantum physics, the answer becomes even harder to grasp. On one hand, the timeless equations suggest that time may not exist fundamentally. On the other hand, the branching, probabilistic nature of quantum reality suggests that time may be far more complex than a simple forward flow. It may be a scaffolding our minds use to make sense of quantum events, a way of translating a timeless reality into a narrative we can live inside of. In the quiet of night, as you reflect on these possibilities, you might begin to feel how fragile our sense of time really is. We take it for granted that seconds tick by, that hours accumulate, that the past is behind us and the future ahead. But in the quantum world, none of this is certain. Time dissolves into probability, into symmetry, into strange connections that defy distance and delay. It becomes less like a river and more like a web, woven from relationships and possibilities, not from a steady, universal flow. And within this web, our perception may be less about discovering what time truly is and more about constructing an illusion that allows us to live, to remember, to hope, and to dream. If physics reshapes our understanding of time in the cosmos and in the quantum world, then neuroscience brings the mystery closer to home, into the folds of our own minds. Because whatever time may be at the deepest levels of reality, our daily experience of it is shaped not by equations or theories, but by the brain. Time, as we feel it, is not measured only by clocks in laboratories or by the orbits of planets. It is constructed by neural networks, woven together through perception, memory, and anticipation. And when we explore the brain's role, we begin to see that much of what we call the passage of time may be less about the external universe and more about the stories our minds create the human brain does not possess a single organ or region dedicated to keeping time, the way the eye sees or the ear hears. Instead, time perception is distributed across many systems, each contributing to the way we experience moments, intervals, and rhythms. At the most basic level, the brain uses patterns of neural firing to track durations. Neurons fire in oscillations, like internal clocks ticking in parallel, and these rhythms help us sense whether a second or a minute has passed. But this is not mechanical timekeeping. It is noisy, imprecise, and deeply influenced by context. Consider how time feels different, depending on attention. When you focus intently on something, time can expand. If you are waiting for a phone to ring, staring at the clock, each second stretches, pulled out like taffy. But when your attention is absorbed, when you are lost in a book, immersed in music, or swept into conversation, time contracts. Hours pass unnoticed, as though they vanished. Neuroscientists suggest this is because the brain's perception of time is linked to how much information it processes. When you are waiting, focusing on every tick, the brain encodes each moment densely, giving the impression of length. When you are distracted or absorbed, fewer time markers are encoded, so the interval feels shorter. The passage of time, then, is not fixed. It depends on how the brain is engaged. Emotion also bends the brain's perception of time. Fear, for example, often makes time feel slower. In a moment of danger, say, a car skidding on ice, or a sudden fall, the brain floods with adrenaline. Sensory systems become hyperactive, recording more detail than usual. Looking back, the memory is packed with dense information, which the mind interprets as having lasted longer. Joy, on the other hand, can make time feel fleeting. Laughter, play, and pleasure leave us wishing moments would last longer, but in the brain's construction, they often pass quickly, because fewer distinct markers are recorded. Sadness, anticipation, each emotion leaves its own fingerprint on the experience of time. Memory is perhaps the most profound way the brain shapes time. Without memory, there would be no past. Life would be a series of disconnected moments, each appearing and disappearing in isolation. But memory binds events together, stitching them into a narrative. The hippocampus, deep within the brain, is central to this process. It records sequences of events and creates temporal order. When you remember a vacation, for example, you recall not only what happened, but in what order this. Before that, morning before evening. Memory creates continuity, and continuity creates the illusion of a flowing past. Yet memory is not perfect. It is selective, fragile, and prone to distortion. We forget, we compress, we fill gaps with guesses. The timeline the brain produces is less like a precise recording and more like a story edited and revised. That story feels like time itself, but it is only one of many possible reconstructions. Anticipation plays a similar role in shaping the future. The brain is constantly predicting what will happen next, drawing on patterns from the past. This predictive coding helps us move smoothly through the world, catching a ball in flight or finishing a friend's sentence. But it also creates a sense of the future as something real and waiting for us. Neuroscientists have found that the same brain regions involved in remembering the past are active when imagining the future. In a way, the brain does not distinguish sharply between memory and imagination. Both are constructions, simulations created from stored fragments. We feel the future as something approaching, but in truth, it is our brain simulating possibilities, much as it reconstructs the past. Culture and language also shape the brain's perception of time. In English, we often speak of time as a line, stretching from behind us into the future ahead. In some cultures, time is described vertically, future above, past below. These metaphors influence how people imagine the flow of time in their minds, shaping gestures, planning, and even memory. To think of time as a path you walk is different from thinking of it as a river you drift upon. Both metaphors are constructions, and both shape the way the brain experiences duration and change. The brain's perception of time is also connected to bodily rhythms. The circadian clock, governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, orchestrates the cycle of wakefulness and sleep, synchronizing us to the 24-hour rotation of the Earth. Hormones rise and fall, body temperature fluctuates, attention waxes and wanes. These cycles anchor us, giving us a sense of days and nights, of waking and dreaming. Within shorter spans, the brain also measures rhythms through the body: heartbeats, breathing, footsteps. These embodied signals create temporal structure. When you run, when you dance, when you breathe deeply, the rhythm of the body influences the rhythm of the mind. Time is not something you passively observe. It is something you feel through your body's pulses and cycles. Interestingly, the brain also struggles with very long durations. It is easy to feel the length of a second, a minute, perhaps an hour. But what about a century, a millennium, a geological epoch? These scales are beyond direct perception. The brain compresses them, representing vast spans of history with symbols, stories, or single images. You might imagine dinosaurs roaming the earth or glaciers advancing and retreating, but you cannot feel the millions of years that separate those events. This limitation shows that our perception of time is tuned for survival and daily life, not for comprehending cosmic scales. The vastness of deep time escapes us, just as the fleeting intervals of quantum events do. The brain constructs time within the range that matters to a human life, leaving the rest to imagination. Technology, too, reshapes perception. Before clocks and watches, people lived by natural cues: sunrise, sunset, the crow of a rooster, the position of shadows. Time was fluid, approximate, and communal. With the spread of mechanical clocks, time became segmented, uniform, and external. The brain began to internalize this precision. Now, with digital devices, with calendars synced across the globe, with alarms and reminders, time has become something we constantly track. Notifications tell us the hour, the minute, the second. This constant measurement affects the way the brain experiences time, sometimes intensifying anxiety, sometimes fragmenting attention, sometimes creating the sense that life is racing forward at an accelerated pace. And yet, when stripped of all devices, when alone in silence, the brain still constructs its own time. In meditation, in deep rest, in states of flow, the boundaries of moments blur. Minutes dissolve into timelessness or expand into eternity. Neuroscientists have studied monks and meditators who report losing track of time completely, entering states where the self dissolves and awareness floats free of sequence. In these states, brain activity shifts, especially in networks related to self and attention. What emerges is the possibility that our ordinary perception of time is not the only mode of consciousness. Perhaps the linear flow we normally feel is only one way the brain can organize experience, and under certain conditions, it can dissolve altogether. The brain's perception of time, then, is a delicate and complex construction. It is shaped by attention, emotion, memory, anticipation, culture, body, and technology. It bends under stress, contracts in joy, stretches in fear, collapses in meditation. It cannot be separated from the brain itself, because without the brain, there would be no perception of time at all. And this raises the profound question: if time feels so different depending on how it is perceived, then what is its true nature? Is there such a thing as real time beyond the brain's construction, or is the time we live inside nothing more than the brain's best attempt to make sense of change, to weave continuity out of fragments, to give meaning to the flow of experience that would otherwise be chaotic and disconnected? If physics tells us how time bends and neuroscience reveals how we perceive it, then philosophy asks the deeper question: what is time truly, at its core? Is it an independent reality that exists outside of us, moving forward regardless of our awareness, or is it something we impose upon the world, a conceptual framework created by human thought to make sense of change? Philosophers, stretching from antiquity to modernity, have wrestled with this question for millennia, and their reflections form an essential part of the puzzle. When we pause to contemplate time through philosophy, we encounter not only intellectual inquiry, but also a mirror to our existence, because how we define time shapes how we understand ourselves, our lives, and the universe we inhabit. The earliest philosophers often link time with the cycles of nature. In ancient Greece, thinkers such as Heraclitus spoke of reality as constant flux, a river in which nothing stays still. For him, time was inseparable from change itself. To exist was to change, and time was simply the unfolding of becoming. Parmenides, on the other hand, offered a strikingly different vision. He argued that change was an illusion, that reality was one and unchanging, eternal and unmoving. If Parmenides was right, then time as we feel it would be nothing more than a trick of perception, a veil drawn across the timeless truth. These two visions of time as dynamic flow, or as illusions, still echo in today's debates. Plato described time as the moving image of eternity. For him, there existed an eternal realm of perfect forms, timeless and unchanging, and time in the material world was a reflection, a shadow cast by eternity into the realm of motion and decay. In contrast, Aristotle sought a more grounded understanding, defining time as the number of motion according to before and after. In his view, time was not a substance but a measure, a way of ordering events. To Aristotle, time did not exist independently. It required change to be measured, and without motion, there would be no time at all. This raises a profound thought. If the universe ever reached a state of complete stillness, would time cease to exist? Or would it continue silently, without events to mark its passage? As centuries passed, different traditions explored time in ways that often reflected spiritual and cultural values. In Eastern philosophy, for example, time was not always conceived as linear. In Hindu and Buddhist thought, cycles of creation and destruction, birth and rebirth, emphasized circular time. The cosmos itself was seen as breathing in vast rhythms, stretching far beyond the scale of human lives. To think in cycles is to see time not as a straight line marching toward an endpoint, but as an eternal recurrence, where endings give way to beginnings. This contrasts with the Western tradition, where, influenced by Judeo-Christian theology, time was often understood as linear, with a clear beginning, creation, and an anticipated end, whether in apocalypse, judgment, or ultimate fulfillment. These cultural frameworks continue to shape how societies structure meaning, how they narrate history, and how they imagine the future. In the modern era, the philosophy of time became more entangled with science. Immanuel Kant, writing in the 18th century, argued that time was not something there in the universe, but a form of human intuition. According to Kant, space and time are conditions of our perception, mental frameworks through which we experience reality. They are not features of things in themselves, independent of our minds, but structures of consciousness itself. This radical idea means that time may not exist in any objective sense, but is instead a necessary lens through which the human mind organizes sensory experience. Without this lens, there would be no before or after, no order, no succession, just an incomprehensible flood of sensations. In the 20th century, with Einstein's relativity reshaping physics, philosophers revisited old debates with new urgency. One central question emerged: does only the present exist, or do the past and future exist as well? Presentism is the view that only the present moment is real, that the past has slipped away into nothingness, and the future is not yet. According to this perspective, the now is all that exists, and time is a continuous erasure, where reality constantly updates itself with each passing instant. Eternalism, however, argues that past, present, and future all exist equally. This is often called the block universe view, where time is like a vast landscape, and each moment is a place. Within it, we as conscious beings move along the path, but all moments yesterday, today, tomorrow are already there, fixed and eternal. This echoes Parmenides' ancient view that change and flow are illusions, and only the whole of time exists as a timeless structure. Then there is the growing block theory, which offers a compromise. The past and present are real, but the future is not yet. The block of reality grows as events occur, expanding forward with each moment. This gives time a sense of unfolding while preserving the existence of the past. Which of these views is true? Philosophy cannot yet decide, and perhaps the answer depends on whether physics eventually reveals a deeper layer of time structure. But in contemplating them, we see how our sense of time depends on metaphysical assumptions as much as on physical measurement. Another important debate is whether time is fundamental or emergent. Fundamentalists argue that time is woven into the fabric of the universe, a basic ingredient of existence, just as real as space or matter. But others suggest that time is emergent, a byproduct of change, entropy, or consciousness. In this view, time does not exist independently, but arises when systems evolve. If there were no change, no difference, no motion, there would be no time. Some philosophers even suggest that the flow of time is not an objective feature of the world but a psychological illusion, much like how color is not in the external world, but in our perception of wavelengths. The redness of an apple is not a property of the apple itself, but of our brain interpreting light. Could the same be true of time, that the flow we feel is not out there in reality, but in here in the mind? Philosophy also asks how time relates to free will. If eternalism is true, all moments exist equally, then the future is already there, as fixed as the past. Does that mean we lack freedom, that every choice is predetermined? Or is it possible that free will coexists with a block universe, that our conscious experience of making choices is itself part of the eternal structure? On the other hand, if only the present is real, then perhaps the future is open, unwritten, waiting for us to bring it into existence. Our decisions, then, shape the unfolding of time itself. These reflections do not remain abstract. They touch how we think about responsibility, destiny, and meaning in our lives. Beyond these debates, philosophy uses time to question existence itself. If time had a beginning, what came before it? Can there even be a before without time? If time stretches endlessly into the past, how can the present moment ever have arrived? These paradoxes push thought to its limits. Saint Augustine famously wrote, "What is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it, I do not know." In this confession, we see the essence of the puzzle. Time is so intimate to our experience that we feel it constantly, yet when we try to grasp it, it slips through our fingers. In recent decades, philosophers and scientists have begun to converge in asking whether time is real at all. Some argue that the universe at its most fundamental level, described by timeless equations of quantum gravity, does not contain time. Instead, time emerges from correlations between events, from patterns of change. If this is true, then time as we know it is not a universal backdrop, but a local, emergent phenomenon, much like temperature emerges from the motion of particles. This perspective echoes Kant's idea, but grounded in physics. Time may be a condition for human experience rather than a property of ultimate reality. And yet, philosophy reminds us that even if time is an illusion, it is the most persistent one we know. We live within it, breathe within it, are carried along by its current. Whether it is fundamental or emergent, linear or cyclic, flowing or static, time structures the way we live. It shapes memory, identity, mortality, and hope. To ask whether time is real is to ask what it means to exist at all, to ask what it means to be a creature aware of beginnings and endings, to stand within the present while stretching toward both past and future, suspended in a mystery we can never fully resolve. If time is perhaps not what it seems, if the flow we feel is in some way an illusion constructed by our minds or a secondary feature of the universe rather than its bedrock, then the natural question becomes, how should we live? What does it mean to exist within an illusion? And how does this awareness shape our choices, our relationships, and the way we see the world? To live beyond the illusion of time is not to escape it, because as embodied beings, we remain bound to clocks, to aging, to memories and hopes. Rather, it is to change the way we relate to time. to soften its grip upon us, and to cultivate a perspective that sees through its surface into something deeper. Our daily lives are ruled by time. We wake up at specific hours. We measure productivity in minutes and hours. We feel the weight of deadlines pressing on us, and we watch our birthdays pass as markers of years accumulating behind us. Time is experienced not just as a measurement, but as a pressure, as something that pushes us forward whether we are ready or not. It is often the root of stress, of anxiety about the future, of regret about the past. But when we begin to question the reality of time, when we allow ourselves to wonder whether it is truly a river sweeping us along or something more mysterious, we can find a subtle shift in our relationship with it. If the past, present, and future may all exist together, or if time emerges only from change rather than being an ultimate flow, then perhaps we can loosen our hold on the ticking of the clock and find a gentler way of being, living beyond the illusion of time begins with presence. Philosophers, mystics, and scientists alike have pointed out that the present moment is the only one we truly experience. The past exists as memory, the future as imagination, but what we have is the now. Yet the now is not a thin slice of reality between what was and what will be. It is the entirety of our experience. When we sink into presence, when we notice the breath entering and leaving our lungs, the subtle sounds around us, the feeling of gravity holding us to the earth, we begin to experience time less as a linear march and more as a spacious field. Awareness becomes less about moving through moments and more about resting within them. There is an irony here. Science tells us that the present moment itself may not exist in any universal sense. For one observer, now is different from another observer's now, depending on speed, motion, and position in space. Relativity dissolves the idea of a single cosmic present, and yet, subjectively, the present is all we know. Perhaps this is where living beyond the illusion takes root, not in trying to conquer time or deny its existence, but in recognizing that our true life unfolds only in the immediacy of experience, regardless of whether time is fundamental or emergent. This perspective can change the way we view aging. Normally, we think of ourselves as moving along a timeline, a child becoming an adult becoming older, and eventually life coming to an end. We may fear the passage of years, as though each birthday marks another step toward disappearance. But if time is not a strict linear flow, the past and future exist in some sense alongside the present, then who we were and who we will be are not gone or non-existent, but parts of a greater whole. We can imagine ourselves not as beings marching toward an end, but as constellations of moments, every version of ourselves existing within the vastness of time structure. This idea can bring comfort, a softening of the sharp edges of mortality. To live beyond the illusion is to see that nothing we have ever been is truly erased, that each moment of laughter, sorrow, and love exists within the tapestry of time. Our perception of time also shapes our relationships. Much of human conflict and anxiety arises from holding tightly to the past or worrying obsessively about the future. Regrets cling to us like shadows, while fears of what may come loom ahead, like storm clouds. But if the past and future are not fundamentally separate from the present, then perhaps our grip on them can loosen. We may treat regrets not as wounds to be healed, but as moments still alive within the whole, moments that coexist with all others. We may treat the future not as a burden of uncertainty, but as a possibility already contained within the block of reality, awaiting our conscious experience of it. This does not mean becoming passive, but rather living with a deeper sense of trust that whatever unfolds is already woven into the pattern, and our role is simply to step into it with awareness. Philosophy and spirituality have long suggested that transcending time is a path to peace. In meditation practices, the aim is often to dissolve the sense of past and future, to rest so deeply in the present that time itself seems to vanish. Moments of standing before a vast mountain, gazing at the night sky, listening to music that moves us can suspend our awareness of time. We lose track of minutes and hours, entering a state of timelessness. These experiences hint at what it feels like to live beyond the illusion, to glimpse life outside the narrow framework of clock time. Such glimpses are reminders that time may not be the master we imagine, but rather a veil through which something more enduring shines. Even in science, there are suggestions that timelessness is closer to the fundamental truth. At the deepest level, equations of physics often do not require time. They describe relationships, patterns, and structures without a need for a flowing before and after. Time may emerge only when we step into a human scale, when entropy increases, when our brains perceive change. If that is so, then timelessness is not mystical poetry, but scientific reality. To live beyond the illusion is to align with this truth, to recognize that the ultimate fabric of existence may not move forward at all, but living beyond the illusion does not mean ignoring practical life. We still need to catch flights, meet friends at agreed times, pay bills before deadlines. The clock remains useful, just as a map is useful for navigation. What changes is the weight we give it. Instead of letting time define our worth, dictate our anxieties, or imprison our sense of self, we treat it as a tool. We can still schedule, still plan, but with a softer heart, knowing that time is not ultimate reality, but a convenient framework. In this way, the burden of rushing, of feeling constantly late or behind, begins to ease. There's a deeper freedom here. If time is an illusion, then so too is the idea that we are trapped in the story of our past. Mistakes, traumas, old identities, these need not define us, because they are not the only reality. If all moments exist, then so too do the moments of joy, strength, of love. Living beyond the illusion allows us to shift focus, to dwell on the parts of our existence that bring meaning and connection, rather than being held hostage by regret. Similarly, the future need not haunt us with fear. If it already exists in some sense, then perhaps we can meet it with curiosity rather than dread, knowing that it is simply another part of the eternal structure waiting to unfold in our conscious awareness. Ultimately, eating beyond the illusion of time is about cultivating spaciousness. Instead of experiencing life as a narrow race against the clock, we expand into the awareness that time is not what it seems. We become more present, more accepting, more open to awe. We see our lives not as fleeting sparks doomed to vanish, but as patterns woven into a fabric far greater than we can imagine. This shift does not erase challenges or suffering, but it does transform them, allowing us to carry them with greater ease. When we live beyond the illusion, we step into a kind of timeless perspective that has always been hinted at by both science and philosophy, by mystics and mathematicians, by poets and physicists. We discover that time, whether real or illusory, does not define us as strictly as we once believed, and that in the vast expanse of existence, there is a freedom waiting in how we choose to relate to it. As we have wandered together through the mysteries of time, we have questioned whether it is a river flowing endlessly forward or a construct shaped by our perception. We began with the problem itself. Is time real, or is it an illusion? We explored how humans experience time as a constant companion, a ruler of our schedules, and yet how science, through Einstein's relativity, revealed that time bends and stretches, that it is not as absolute as we once believed. We ventured into the block universe, where past, present, and future may all coexist, and into the strange realms of quantum physics, where time becomes uncertain and elusive at the smallest scales. We turned inward to the brain, the seat of our perception, realizing that our sense of time is woven not by clocks, but by neural rhythms. We reflected on the philosophies that have long asked whether time is fundamental or emergent, real or illusory. And finally, we lingered with the possibility of living beyond the illusion, of softening our relationship with time and discovering presence, acceptance, and freedom in the awareness that time may not define us as much as we think. When we step back and hold all these insights together, picture emerges that is not rigid but spacious, not final but open. Time, whether illusion or reality, not a simple line, but a vast landscape of possibility. To recognize this is not to solve the mystery once and for all, but to rest more comfortably within it. Perhaps the value lies not in proving whether time exists, but in allowing its uncertainty to guide us toward a gentler way of being. If time flows, we can float with it. If time is an illusion, we can rest in the stillness behind it. Either way, we find ourselves here, in this moment, listening, breathing, existing, alive within the mystery.